Hi, everybody. It's T. Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today, we're going to begin a new subject requested by many of you on the last call, and that is the secrets trade show selling portion of a lifetime of leads. And so, to kind of help everybody follow along with what I'm covering in this call, let me just send a document over to all of you. One moment, please. And here we are. So we're going to do this to everybody. Basically, I'm sending you the document I'm showing on screen right now. So I imagine you guys are looking at something that says Secrets of Trade Show Selling in nice big letters. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So I just sent that same thing to you. It's a Word document. Apparently, this was an article that I wrote 19 years ago. So it might be, there might be a couple of things we'd want to update a little bit, but for now, this is where we were 19 years ago, and I believe that what I'm going to be sharing in this is going to mean just as much to today as later. One thing I did notice about this article, though, is that I don't talk anywhere about really managing tension. But ultimately, everything about Secrets of Trade Show Selling is about managing the tension of people who are not only at the trade show, but the people who are really your qualified prospects. So let's kind of go through these, and you guys can follow along, take notes in that document if you feel so inclined, and I will send it over to everybody one more time just to make sure. I never know in the chat window, if you join the call a little later, do you see the chat from the beginning of the call or just from where you join in? So, oh, by the way, this is for Brian. As it turns out, Fathom does not work with Zoom webinars. It only
Really?
works with Zoom meetings, but not with Zoom webinars.
Uh,
So maybe they'll
okay.
expand it, but I was wondering, why won't this work? Well, it's because I do everything in Zoom webinar. But yeah, anywho, there you have it. All right. So the very first lesson in Secrets of Trade Show Selling is the question about why exhibit. And so let's kind of look at some of the reasons why people might exhibit. Oh, one more thing I want to send you. Just 1 second. This one might need some explanation, but I mentioned about having that evaluation form. So I've just sent the evaluation form to everybody as well, or chatted it over to everybody as well. So,
Hey T.
Hey, yes.
Hey, over the weekend I found the document marketing, the showcase marketing document, which I guess it gets more granular.
Yeah, well, yeah, because we're digging through old files now. And I remember back in the days when we were doing these calls, we called this series, this was probably part of Business Builder, because there was ways for you to find clients. And on all those calls, we would ask someone to serve as the scribe because you couldn't even record calls back then. And so sometimes those old things that you find, you might see they've got some kind of random notes scattered hither and yon, but it should all still be pretty good. So it'll be interesting as you look through that, Chris, to tell me, is it same stuff I'm showing here, or is it something that's kind of different?
You have 66 points on this one, so I'll send this over to you.
Wait, it was 66 points, and is that from Secrets of Trade Show Selling?
Whoa.
Oh, okay, David, that's actually your line.
It's from Marketing Change Works to Potential Clients, Showcase Marketing, Asset 04. So
oh,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
that's different. Yeah, showcase marketing is different than Secrets of Trade Show Selling.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's really great because, if you guys want to work our way through that whole Building a Career That Matters series, you'll touch on all of those different subjects. And there's a lot there. There's something like 100 hours worth of material already done on it. So yeah, anyway, lots there. Anyway, so I sent over the booth evaluation form for you guys to see as well. I'll chat it over again just in case anyone else has joined the call recently. There's the form, and here's the trade show insights document. All right, so
is that really a thing now, like trade shows with everything moving like online, or is that still like a big thing? Or
Chris, unmute and tell them how big it is.
It's huge. I mean, last week was 9,000 people in attendance. And that's not even counting well, to your point, there was some people still online, but there was 9,000 people physically there and 500 vendors present for this event in San Diego at the convention center there, which is huge. And they utilized the whole convention center, the whole
Well, they did,
breakout training rooms.
yeah, because I was wondering, Chris, did you notice if any other conventions were happening at the same time?
The smaller ones were happening at the same time inside of the hotel.
All right.
And right after ATD ended, there was a national cattlemen's trade show that began the day after ATD ended, and they filled the hotel.
Yeah, you got to believe that's a big, big, big group. So to your question, Brian, I would say it's coming back, and obviously it's coming back with a bit of a vengeance. So yeah, so I think there's lots of opportunity out there and more. But for all of you guys, if you're just trying to build more of your local business, the real question is, has your Chamber of Commerce started doing their little gatherings again? Are they doing any kind of trade show opportunity for you? Are your local chapters of some of the national or international organizations, are they doing any kind of trade show activities? And certainly as I look down this list, I know I'm looking at people who are in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Detroit. These are huge cities, I promise you. There's going to be activity there. One of the ways that you can find out what kinds of events are going on or are scheduled to go on is to see if your local chamber of commerce has a convention bureau. Sometimes it's separate, sometimes it's just part of the chamber, but they have a tendency to list all of the major convention venues and what's scheduled to be at them at any given point in time. So, because usually these kinds of things are booked, oh my goodness, probably years in advance if they need that much space, if they need that much stuff going on. So yeah, yeah. Hang on just 1 second, if you will. I just heard the doorbell ring. Just a second. Chat amongst yourselves about trade shows.
I think this is going to be quite exciting, actually.
Absolutely. And what was very interesting, Brian, is you can tell, especially with the vendors, which vendors had a plan and which ones did not have an intentional plan of engagement, interactivity, collecting leads. You can see the difference because there were people, and booths are expensive at these events, and there were people at booths just sitting back on their cell phone, texting, or whether it was Instagram, Facebook, or catching up at work. And the other booths had a sole focus on the people that were there, and you can see the huge difference, how they were marketing themselves at that event by having that booth space.
Interesting. So I've heard of, I don't think I've ever been to a trade show, but I think I've heard of trade shows for like just vendors. But what you're talking about, like trade shows that are connected to a convention where.
Yes.
Well, and they're also, and this I'm sure you are happening everywhere. In each community, there's kind of like the builder show and sort of the home show, the home and garden show. So these things are open to the public, obviously. And I think that they are probably back into high gear. I know that when we lived in Charlotte, the place where they did the big home expo, and Linda's on the call, she can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems to me that part of that vendor space is something that certain vendors could reserve for the entire year. So no matter what was going on at the convention center, some people owned the booth space, and it was theirs for the use for the entire year. Because you would just see what they'd set up. You would go like, they did not set this up on Thursday afternoon. This has been there forever. And so you might very well be surprised to find out how much trade show activity is happening in your area, and certainly the national stuff is going to be expensive for the booth holders, but the entrance fee to get in as a visitor is usually nominal. And if the crowd's big enough, sometimes you can just walk right in and no one's going to say boo to you. So, yep. All right. Anyway,
Interesting.
yeah. So the opportunity, I do believe, is there, and it's coming back stronger and stronger. So as long as we don't have another little microscopic pest come along, we should be good to go. So anyway, so I put together, and did I send you guys the evaluation form? I did. So let me slide in
Yes.
here. Basically, you would be wandering around the show. You put in the name of the company and the date and the time that you did the evaluation, and then you're just trying to work your way through these points that we're covering to rate them. How good of a job are they doing when it comes to booth design, their location, furnishing, signs, tension management, the basics about how they're conducting and presenting themselves, how effectively they're communicating their message and getting all that good stuff going on. And then you end up with a total score. And that total score ends up being up to 100. And it's kind of fun when you go to the show and let's say you decide to evaluate, I don't know, 25 booths. If you have like a blue ribbon, you can actually go up and at the end of all of your evaluations say you're the winner for the best booth. And it could be from your company, you can have a little bit of fun with the whole thing. And if you want to have a second place and a third place, you can certainly do that. And it's a good way for you to kind of open up conversation with those booth holders about what's going on. But ultimately, what you really want to do is as you evaluate a booth, you want to grab a business card of someone who's there. Most of this evaluation, by the way, takes place without engaging anyone in the booth. Only the last part of it, section E on communication effectiveness, will you be evaluating the individual themselves. Obviously, this is geared for people who are doing more training in the areas of sales training or influence training, marketing training, something like that. It's a very good way to go about doing that. So you get some sort of way to send your feedback back to them. And then what you do is at the end of things, you email or you physically mail the results to the director of sales, to the head of marketing, to the owner of the company and whatever. And I'll also show you the letters that accompany this, but it says, we were recently at such and such a show. And what we did was we evaluated your booth, and enclosed is your results. If you're not interested, feel free to just discard them. And otherwise, please please reach out, and you can actually point them into how to deal with each one of these. In fact, I think if we actually listen to the Secrets of Trade Show Selling video series, audio series, it would cover every one of these 25 points. So we can give them some advice on how to help with each one of these.
Do you tell them what it's based on, or do you just give them the eval and the letter itself? Or do you like you're telling them this is behavioral kind of insights or anything like a?
Yeah, what I would say to all of our professionals who are using this is say, do take that introductory letter as an opportunity to introduce yourself. So who are you? What are you all about? Why are you doing this evaluation? And I think that you don't have to say all that much just to say that you are an expert in the field of tension management in the world of lead generation, prospecting, sales, whatever it happens to be. But all of you are experts in the field of tension management, and you can give them. And of course, you're positioning this as a way to help them ensure that they are getting their due when it comes to the investment that they've made in their trade show booth.
Mhm.
All right.
AT, how are you describing 0, 1 through 4? Are you relating that to tension or effectiveness?
Oh, effectiveness. This is purely
Okay.
your evaluation of what's going on. Obviously, you give them a 0 if they didn't bother doing much of anything. If there's no evidence of tension management, give them 0s. But I believe, unless I'm incorrect, that these 10 that I want to go over today are covering everything in Section A and Section B. So the purpose of their exhibit and the booth design. But that's what this form is. Okay, and I'll see if I can find what I did as far as 11 through 25 is concerned, but I got to do a bit more digging to find all that.
This
All right.
is good because I bet not many people actually give thought to even the first 10.
Oh, you've
You
got
know what
no
I mean?
idea.
Right.
You'd be shocked to find out how little thought booth holders actually give to the fact that they have a booth. So you end up with a bowl of peppermints, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Chris, am I right that you saw a lot of really sloppy booths?
Absolutely. And you can tell also that some people may care more about the latter than starting with one, starting with what's your purpose, because that should dictate your furnishings, your layout, all those other things. But it seems like design gets more priority than purpose with some of those booths I encountered.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so if you don't know what your purpose is, how can you design your booth?
All right.
If your booth isn't designed properly, well, then good luck with tension management. In fact, good luck getting anyone to even step into the booth. And then
Right.
we got to look at the way that you're behaving. In fact, I can throw this question to Chris, and he went to a big one most recently. How often did you see the people staffing the booth spending more time talking to each other instead of trying to pull fish out of the stream that's flowing in front of their booth
Mm.
every moment?
What's funny, while you went to the door, I was sharing with Brian that one thing I observed, forget about spending time with each other within the booth. When there were multiple people, they both individually were on their cell phones.
Yeah, there you
Mm.
go.
They were disengaged from the person they were with and the audience.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they do that. Or they'll talk to their next door booth. It's like it becomes a chummy kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah, Shags, I send it over to everyone. I'm trying to now. I've got so much stuff open on my screen. I'm trying to find what I'm sending you. So give me a half a jiffy here, and I'll get it over to you as well.
And you know what's also T, I'm not sure. I need to look at your document, but the Chotskys,
Oh yeah, that's
they
in there.
rely on that being the coming into the booth more than anything else too.
Yeah, well, sometimes the most pathetic booths of all are the ones where there is no staff, there is no design, there's just a table with a pile of brochures on it.
Right.
You
And
just go like, what did you pay for that booth to have, this terrible, terrible
So much they couldn't afford brochure racks.
well, obviously they certainly were in trouble with something or another. Um, let's see if I can why can't I find what I was just looking for? Here we are inside of this one.
You can always email it later.
I lost it. I lost my connection to my back, but I'll email it over later. It's yeah, most of it that I'm showing is going to be on the screen. Anywho, but the point is, if you don't do the early stage stuff correctly, you can forget the rest of it.
right.
So let's slide that out of the way. Let's get into those first 10 elements. And so you would be judging them. So lesson number one, and I did it as lessons, but I'm just dividing things up in articles. So why exhibit? There are many great reasons to have an exhibit at a trade show. So here's 12 of them, and I won't go through all of them, but maybe you're trying to market a new product. Maybe you're trying to conduct some sort of research. Maybe you're trying to strengthen relationship with your current customers. And talking about trade show booths, don't even get me started on people having hospitality suites. So how do you know when it's time to invite someone to a hospitality suite, which is costing you many, many, many times the amount of money you invested in having the trade show booth? All right, so the challenging part is to select and focus on just one as your primary purpose. You can choose one or two more for secondary sorts of things, but you can't do all of these things. You just can't. Some of them might happen automatically, like enhancing your corporate image, could have a lot to do with the way people are carrying themselves, the way they're dressed, the way the booth looks. There's some mighty impressive booths. In fact, Chris, did any booths there really stand out to you as ones that they spent a lot of time and money creating their booth concept, their booth layout, the displays?
Yeah, definitely. Ken Blanchard, because he went through a recent redesign of his brand. And so their booth was right up front when you walked in, and it towered amongst the other booths. And the brand intention was recognized not just in the physical things, but also what the people wore as well as clothing, down to the last detail. The brand awareness was on spot. So, and it was a beautifully designed booth too.
Yeah, now it's interesting that if it's right in, it's got to be big to get your attention. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this later in these little lessons. But one of the things you really need to go, okay, in fact, it's here. From attention management perspective, your location in regard to the natural flow of visitor traffic is critical. Upon arrival, visitors are likely to be quite far upgraded in high power stress or stress. This level of tension stimulates them to hurry through the first portion of the route. As they progress, their level of productive tension steadily drops, and as it does, so drops their level of interest. You want them to notice you when they are most likely to pay attention to what you have to offer, when they are in power or power stress. Therefore, avoid the first aisle or two, but select a location in the first half of the flow pattern. You'll meet your prospects after they've settled into the show, but before they get tired. Okay, so that's in there about the location of it. Now,
That's if you have an option.
well, if you have an option, because that's why you want to get involved early. The bigger booths have fewer choices. And so if you can't get the best location, you'd better have a very large, impressive, attention-grabbing sort of a booth in order to have that traffic actually come and stay with you. Yes.
When my friend and I went to the Women's Expo,
Yep.
our power stress took us to the very back corner of the expo because we knew nobody would, and we were waiting in line to get in, so everybody rushed, right?
Mhm.
We thought we'll go to the very back where people aren't there yet, and we'll have time to avoid a crowd and really see things.
Yep. Yeah, and so would that have been still within the first half of the trade show opportunities?
What do you mean?
I mean, like if you thought about the natural way that people move, in our culture, we have a tendency to move to the right counterclockwise.
Yeah, that's what we did.
So you want to make sure that you now sometimes your path through the show is dictated by the show operators. Just think about IKEA. So they apply the IKEA shopper control methodology to how a trade show operates. But generally speaking, people are going to walk into a trade show and move to the right counterclockwise through the show. They also have a tendency to do the perimeter before they do the interior of the show. And so these are things you have to kind of figure out. And you really can't figure it out until you look at the layout of what they have for the show. Like sometimes there's an entrance for the show that is independent of where the main convention meetings would be held. And sometimes the trade show is off of the main meeting hall. And so you got to really go like, it's not where the front door is. Where's the crowd going to come from? So these are things that have to do with really looking at the location. And by the way, what do you think the point is if you guys evaluating a booth and sending it to the companies that own or operate these booths? It's to get them to engage your services in booth design and booth training and all that sort of stuff later on. You know what I mean? And so this idea about, well, how are they going to know how to actually choose the best location? Well, the answer is by hiring you. And so you're the one who's going to figure out, based on the layout of the show, what the natural traffic patterns are going to be. You might also need to choose a location, and I'm kind of going off whatever my little writing here happens to be, but you might also choose a location based on when the show is operational. So for example, in the massive shows, the trade show probably continues nonstop. Even though there's a convention going on, meetings going on all over the place, there are always people who decided not to go to a breakout session, decided that instead they were going to use that time to go into the trade show hall because they wanted to avoid the crowd, or they wanted to have a little bit more time to really talk to people, etc. And so it's really, I think, important for you to have what's the schedule of the event. so that you know when are these big moments going to be where people are going to come into the show. So for example, let's say the show is one where they pretty much put the food inside of it as well. So the little, I don't know what you want to call it, but the cafeteria area, or where the food trucks might be, or food services might be, you got to know that during lunchtime, that area is going to be really crowded. Do you want a booth that's right up against the crowd? Or do you want a booth that is like one row away from the crowd? You know, you have to factor this all in to kind of choose the absolute best booth location. Is this making sense? Or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's all to me.
I used to go to a lot of trade shows as a financial advisor, and I was wondering, well,
Yeah, well, and
what were they thinking when they put this thing together? And
exactly, because you know, all due respect to the profession, people that are in financial services or people that are running financial services organizations, they generally don't have that much of a marketing mindset. Sales mindset, yeah, you sit them down one-on-one with a prospective client and they can probably do a decent job, but you put them into a trade show setting and suddenly these people, okay, how do I put this? Certain industries attract extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
Financial services is not one of them. Generally, and Shags, by the way, is the exception. So usually people that are attracted to financial services as a career are very analytical in their thought process. They can be very engaging, very amiable. But when you think about who's going to be staffing the booth, you need people who are going to really reach out into that flow of visitors and find a way to pull people into the booth, pull people into the dialogue. And so if you can go to a financial show, by the way, there's always financial services people with booth space at every kind of show you can think of. I don't care what the show is. I promise you, there's going to be financial services people that have chosen to get a booth, whether they're in insurance or they're in investments, retirement, whatever. They figure every one of this show is still, you know, a candidate for their services. So you find them everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, the financial services booths at the women's show, it was like they just didn't want to be there. They're sitting there talking to each other behind one table with a couple of handouts on it.
Yeah.
They, they, you know,
Yeah, and
but
keep in mind that even probably, and Linda, do you have any idea how much people spent on booth space at this kind of a show, or did you get a feel from anyone saying that they invested like X amount?
no, I didn't. I
Oh,
didn't.
then I can tell you that, okay, Linda's part of the League of Women Voters. And even though if we go back to purposes, sometimes the purpose is to provide community service, do some kind of outreach on the community awareness kind of side of things. So League of Women Voters has certainly gotten plenty of booths. Well, there are some shows where the booth might be free for nonprofit organizations. Maybe they want something nominal, like 50 or $100 or whatever it is. But when you go to one of these bigger shows, you got to believe people are investing $1,000 or more at a minimum just to have the space. So yeah, yep. All right.
Yeah, I wonder would this work at those I think before I came out here to Nicaragua, I took my nephew to uh medical colleges like career fair thing.
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
it was a host of them there. And they were just standing there. And they, oh hi, give you a little brochure, ask you some questions about you, kind of thing. But
Yep.
the ones that impressed me were people that were engaging. They weren't just
Okay.
like they build it, they come kind of mentality.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. But again, we have to factor in that it's all life is tension management. We've said that enough times for that to get locked in. And so here we've got all these universities, colleges, whatever, that are trying to get people to come to their university. No doubt there's also a lot of funding institutions that can provide some sort of like money management, loan management, whatever it is. So there's going to be still going to be a variety, even if it is one of these kinds of shows. The people who tend to work in those capacities are not salespeople. You know, they might be admissions officers, but an admission officer knows that they don't need to sell you on coming. They might need to sell you on filling out an application with the cost of what it costs nowadays to apply to enter a particular college. But you know, they kind of feel like that job's going to be done. The decision is out of their hands. So they're just there to be the face of the organization. And unfortunately, that's not what it's going to take to really attract the top caliber candidates.
Exactly. In fact, the school that he wanted to, that he was, passionate about, their interaction with him was so poor that now he has this bad impression of them.
Yep,
And
absolutely
so,
right.
and so he, and
Oh,
so
look at what Chris just chatted over to everybody.
36,000.
A 10 by 30 booth. Okay, so that's a triple size booth is $18,000. The basic booth is generally 10 by 10. And that's for, that's you and a table and a little bit of a couple of, little display elements. So if they want 18 grand for a 10 by 30, that has to represent a discount over the 10 by 10. I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that a 10 by 10. Oh, so they're doing it directly. A 10 by 10 is 6. You want a 20 by 30. 20 by 30 is 6 booths. So they're going like each one of these basic squares is going to cost you 10. Yeah, there you go. 10 by 12. That's interesting. I wonder if that's a premium price because it's at a corner. They do tend to they understand real estate. So 50 by 50. Okay, 50 by 50 is that's 5 by 25. Now that's a bit of a discount. No, that's still 6 grand each. Nope, that's still 6 grand each for each square. Yeah, so that's what you get. So people are going to spend a minimum of 6 grand in order to be at that show. Plus, they still have to have all their booth decor. I promise you that what they give you for that 10 by 10, for that 6 grand, is they give you the carpet that's on the floor. Maybe you have to pay extra for that. They give you one 6 foot or 8 foot table, maybe with a little blue draping on it. And they might give you one little printout sign so that you know that's your booth when you get there. It's hardly going to do the job. You've got to spend a lot of money to get your displays made, to bring in, you want to rent plants, you want electricity, you want internet connectivity, you're going to be paying above and
All
beyond.
extra.
All extra. And so the minimum of 6 grand for have a 10 by 10. And obviously, again, that's an entry level player or it's a very small show. So you look at what Ken Blanchard probably had. I wouldn't be surprised at all surprised if he didn't have 40 by 40, a 50 by 50. Yep. And Chris just said, you don't get to put your stuff together. You got to hire a union worker to move your stuff in and out. So, and that also means that you're not only paying the union's fees, but we were told when we were doing the really, really big shows, that as a management member at the show, you'd best have a pocket full of $20 or $50 bills. Because sometimes if you want to get something done and get something done well, you need to incentivize whoever it is that's working. They're getting paid their union wages, but you just gave them a tip. And so
I remember hearing from somebody a way to present that too. Is you hold it with both hands with your fingers on the edge and you snap the bill saying, "Can you help me out here?"
Yeah, there you go. Get the attention.
Snap, snap, snap. I need a favor. Snap, snap, snap.
Yep, that's how they kind of know. And it's not a bribe. We call it a tip. so, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. So
That's because you're not asking for anything illegal.
Well, you're not. I mean,
otherwise it is a bribe.
And what does tip mean? I mean, I think most of us know what tip
to ensure promptness.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so did you know that, Brian? The tip actually
I had no idea.
Yeah, it stands for to ensure promptness.
Wow.
To ensure.
Okay. I have to write that one down.
Yeah, that's what tip actually, where it came from. Okay, anywho, so the point is you have to know what the purpose is of your exhibit. If you don't know then you might as well just stay home. And so this is the point I was making to you guys last time around. In fact, depending on your business, your purpose may be better served by abandoning having booths at trade shows altogether and focus on attending them instead. Particularly if you're involved in a business to business enterprise, working the floor may be your best bet. So now imagine if you were in the world of sales training, you want to have a sales training booth. What are you counting on? You're counting on people who are in the position to hire you for sales training to come to your booth. And as much as they may recognize they need sales training, they also probably don't want to be sold. And so the moment you identify yourself as a sales training booth, you're almost scaring people away, because they know that the moment they step into the booth, you possess the skills necessary to talk them into something they might not really want to be talked into at that moment in time. You with me on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, T, I also noticed that like some people that did not have a vendor spot and did not get a booth, what they did was they created an event and just passed out cards for the event goers to attend like their little session on a boat, or they're having a meetup at a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can spend that money far more creatively and with far greater benefit to your purpose very often if you don't have a booth, but instead just work the floor. Because you're right, you can do these invitations, invite people to
Or you get a room in a hotel upstairs and call it a hospitality suite.
a hospitality suite, VIP
Exactly.
suite, things like that. You're passing out like gold invitation sorts of things. You got to have your own, blah blah blah. Now you're getting more serious people because you get to choose who you're handing those things to. So so this whole idea about purpose to me is something that they generally don't even think of. They think they need to be there. And by the way, even at the university shows, do you really think that the Ivy League colleges need to have booth space at one of these college shows?
No.
No, they're going to get applications far beyond their capacity, even if they don't put any energy into it whatsoever. But they have to have a booth there because it would look odd for them not to.
Right.
And yeah, so it's sometimes they're just there because they need to be present, because being absent from that show may communicate a message that the university doesn't want. So it all depends, but they need to engage with you guys. You are attention management experts. And even if you may not fancy yourself as someone who does sales training, I hope you all at least think of yourselves as people who teach people how to be more influential. And sales is just influence training. Looking at all of you on the call, you're okay with sales. You all do sales. But, there might be people listening to this recording that go, well, that's not what I am. I'm doing coaching services or something like that. All right, well then, as a coach, you might want to have your own little booth, but what's going to happen there? Okay, so lesson number 2, this idea about location, we could talk about for a whole lot of time, because there's a lot of factors that come into play with there. Now, I do say some things here like, and let's see, Chris, you can probably tell me if this was true for Blanchard, but they didn't have a space in a row. They were a free floating island. Did they have
Absolutely.
that? They had
Free float.
exposure from all 4 sides.
All 4 sides. It was designed really well.
Yeah, yep. Now, I'll tell you, there is one thing that is even better than having all 4 sides, and that's having at an intersection all 4 corners. So the moment you have all 4 corners, what did you just turn those 4 corners into, including the aisles in the middle of them? You became a giant island. You own the intersection. They're actually all now literally walking through your booth. And so there's a case to be made for that. Every visitor will actually walk through your exhibit.
Hey, T, there's a case for, like I said, I thought about Brian a lot with some of these booths because the attention to detail to neurotransmitters were present, right? Things that will spark the endorphins, the serotonin, the dopamine. I mean, you can tell it was very intentional from the colors, the activities within the booth, and how it was designed, that there was some involvement mentally with the mental side.
Yep. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Now, by the way, if you're evaluating those booths, um, those kind of booths are kind of guaranteed to win because somehow or another they'd figured out how to do these kinds of things we're talking about. So if you're going to invest your time evaluating a booth, make sure that you are spending your time evaluating booths that are within the population of those that might actually hire you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I don't need to slap a blue ribbon on Ken Blanchard's booth. So, he's already won. There he is. And so he doesn't represent any opportunity for us to help people grow. And so you might say, like, no, we only evaluate booths that are 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 or smaller, something like that, because you're trying to help those vendors grow to the point that they become one of these island a booth kind of situations where they become someone who can fork out the 150 grand just for the floor space.
AT, but couldn't that, like, if you evaluated each booth size, couldn't you position yourself in that particular industry as the gold standard where you're issuing out that people at each level, that's something they'll seek out for?
Oh,
Saying,
absolutely.
tension management, approved, or winner of the tension and management
That's
award
right,
or
right. The
X.
large booth, yeah, this is in the large booth category, blah, blah, blah. Here's the,
Right.
you're in the small group category. Yeah, you guys can be as creative as you want. I mean, this is just a concept that I put together and it served us very well. And so I think that if you guys kind of go in this day and age, it's almost like the only marketing we have available to us is something digital. I mean,
Mhm.
you're not going to mail stuff out, and making cold calls is just, that doesn't work anymore. So, what opportunity do you have to go and actually physically interact with prospects? What's left? It seems like the only thing that's really left is a trade show of some sort. So,
Mhm.
so it might be something you guys really do want to research. What's going on in your area? What's going on in your area? And how can you go to it? Um, Okay. So, oh, and by the way, if you go as an independent, they might charge you whatever the cost is to attend the convention, but a lot of times they do have trade show only um, things. Or if you've got a client who has a trade show, they might be able to get you a free ticket to get into the trade show or even get into the whole convention. So there is a lot of, if you're Ken Blanchard and you're going to fork out 150 grand for a booth space, is it fair for me to assume that he's been given some free tickets he can pass out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. There's got to be a benefit to someone who's making that level of investment, or whoever the trade show operator is like missing a big, 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 big point there. Okay, so we talked a lot about location. You guys can read this in more detail, and I'm happy to answer those questions. But the next thing, let's take a look at lesson 3: exploiting your space. When it comes to creating the ideal layout for your exhibit, keep two things in mind. First, you are trying to command the undivided attention of all visitors as they walk in front of your booth. Ideally, your goal is to make sure they can see you, but not notice your neighbors. Second, you want to maximize floor space so that qualified visitors can actually enter your exhibit. Part of this has to do with flow. You don't want to block the aisle. And if people are standing at that table or whatever, there's a limited number of people who can stand in front of your booth. But if you eliminate that physical barrier in the front of the booth, now you've got floor space that people can actually enter. Does this make sense, or is this?
Oh yeah, we always put the table at the back of the booth.
The table's got to be at the back or on the side or whatever, depending on the size of it.
Yeah, back or side.
You really, really want to do it. In fact, we'll be talking about trade show booths being designed on the diagonal as well. But here goes.
AT,
Yep.
real quick. So that's important too. you made me think about why some choose to have a different flooring type than the floor of the conference center,
Yes,
because it creates that illusion of you're entering into another space.
that's right. You're defining your space. So they are now in your store. And you can do that just by changing out whatever the carpet is. Even if they provided carpet as part of their deal, you know it's going to be convention center carpet that's going to be pork. You can lay your own carpet on top of that and make it nice and yeah, David, that's your line. I don't know what's going on there, but feel free to type in something and maybe we can work through whatever that technical issue happens to be. Anyway, let me give you guys a few little pointers about in order to accomplish both these goals, here are a few general rules. You want to make your booth appear as wide and as deep as possible. So yeah. Oh, David just said to everyone, you want to pay for padding. You want the carpet to be comfortable, not just because it makes an impression on your visitors, but you're going to be standing on it at all times. And I just said the word standing. If you are operating a booth, you do not get to sit down unless you are with a customer. And then we have another discussion to have about, is the trade show booth space a place where you actually conduct and close business? Because the cost of you sitting down with one visitor is all the visitors that are walking by your booth and see that you're busy. They might even think I'll come back later, but what's the chances that they actually will come back later? So, right. And so you don't want to leave that space. You can definitely feel the difference because it's comfortable to your visitors to be there, and it's comfortable for you after hours and hours of standing on your feet. Okay, so make your booth appear as wide and as deep as possible. And so that's why, let's say that you had a 10 by 10. Well, are you better off saying, I want the 10 by 10 next door to me so I can be really wide? They might call that a 10 by 20, but sometimes they think a 10 by 20 is 10 feet wide and 20 feet deep. And so you got to be really careful. And by the way, if it's a 10 by 20, you're better off paying the extra to get the end cap on that row. So can you imagine that 10 by 10s back to back on the edge of a row gives you that end cap, like at the grocery store? You know, that's premium territory. So, because now you not only have main exposure to a 20-foot wide main exposure on the aisle, or the main aisle, you also have a 10-foot exposure on either side of the aisles, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you can create a diagonal viewing line, you're even better. To do this, imagine a 10 by 10. And you know how a 10 by 10 might have a high drape in the back of it? I want a high drape on both the back and one side of it, because then I can create a booth based on the diagonal. So without figuring out what the hypotenuse would actually be, you guys do know that is a lot longer than the side. So you want to create as much depth, you can do that on the diagonal if they'll allow that. So yeah, some vendors will design each space differently, even though they own multiple spaces that are connected. This is particularly true in the giant booths. So in the giant booths, that little edge where people would step on to your carpet, step into your world, is going to be filled with things to draw your attention and captivate. But as you go deeper into the booth, you might find that certain sections of the booth are devoted to certain topic areas. And so when we start talking about booth staffing, I'll tell you that the people that are on the outer edges of your booth, regardless of the size of the booth, they need to be the one that are very good at bringing people in. So how many of you have been to Vegas and you're walking down the strip and they've got restaurants have got people right out on the edge trying to draw you in, or people that are drawing you in with a little free match bet kinds of things to get you in the door. That's their whole job, get you in the door. Now, so the moment someone is in the booth space, now you need someone who can perform triage. Those of you who don't have a medical background, triage is the job of figuring out just how sick are you as fast as possible. So they can say, you can wait a while, you need to be seen immediately, and sorry, it's too late for you, you know? So triage is really all about figuring out where to focus people so that you can provide them with a level of service they are most ready to have. I need people who can do triage. So triage is not about talking to the person any longer than necessary to decide who to point them to. And then inside of a large booth, I need to have specialists that I have triaged people toward. So, I'm the triage person. Tell me what brings you here, what kind of business you're in, ask you a few questions so that I can actually do my assessment. And then I say, you need to talk to so-and-so. Let me introduce you. And you perform the introduction and get back to being the triage person as quickly as possible. So, yeah, all right. So that's about triage, I guess. I'm sure we'll get there when I mumble my way through this. Chris is saying, triage is so important. Some just want the little gifts on your table. They will crowd out your true prospects. You are absolutely correct. We're going to be talking about those giveaways in just a moment as well. In fact, you always pay attention where people find their attention. Let me scroll through this since you guys do have this document, and I'll find a way to send it to you if you don't. Oh, what's happening? I'm getting scrolling. Okay, give me a minute. Anyway, all right, guys, are y'all still there? Yeah, Brian, say something. Okay.
Yes, we'll see lesson 6 is showing right
Yeah,
now.
and I've got a little twirly thing that doesn't want to let me go any further than that. It might be because I brought this up from something else. Give me just a jiffy here. I'm going to download my own link and see. Click to open. Does it open it for me? All right, anyway, what do you guys do it for me? If you scroll through that document, did any of you download it and look at it?
Yes, I downloaded.
All right, let me just look at one thing real quick here. Yeah, no, I don't have it on mine, but one of them is about giveaways. I forget what I actually call it, but something about you don't want to become, the premium. I think it's section number 9, lesson number 9. Is you don't want to give away cheap little gizmos, because if you give away cheap little gizmos, you leave everyone with the impression that you're the kind of company that gives away cheap little gizmos. And so, as a little joke, I say on behalf of everyone attending the show, our drawers are full. So you got to give us something else. For some reason, my screen's frozen up. I can't scroll any direction right now at all. But I can certainly go ahead and keep talking about some of these things. But we were
check the chat, T. I just
Yeah.
copied and pasted your
Oh,
notes from there.
good. Thank you. Oh, you did on the premium. So triage. About the most here we go. This one first. Finally, premium should be earned. Oh, I see where we're at.
Earned, yeah.
But the most effective premium is one that would be of great value to your ideal prospect, but of little or no value to your visitors with no interest in your products or services. For example, a commercial printer could create a pre-press reference guide or a booklet of designs and layouts. At the same time, you should never give away what you hope to sell. Instead, offer a related support product or a discount on your goods, something that gets them to visit your place of business or ensures a future meeting. So, for example, one of the things that we see people often do that are trying to sell human development services like coaching, consulting, or something like that is that they want to actually give people a demonstration session. And unfortunately, if you do that, in front of your trade show kind of audience, are you losing the audience? So here's what I did instead. I actually had a large change grid printed out on an easel and had it laminated so that I could use dry erase markers on it. And then I would have someone ask me a question or approach me about a question that they have. And I would invite everybody around to kind of stand there and listen to the debrief I was giving. And I remember I would do it often as a secret sort of a thing where I didn't even need to know, like a blind reading. I didn't even need to know the activity. I would just say, get a situation clearly in your head. Now answer 2 questions. On a scale of 0 to 12, how do you rate your ability to get that situation to turn out the way you want it to? And 0 to 12, how challenging do you think it's going to be? And then I would put a mark on the change grid and I would start reading the change grid. And I'd let them ask me questions or whatever. And everyone who's watching me do this are kind of going, how do you know all that? How are you able to do that? Are you a mind reader or whatever? It's kind of like, no, I'm not a mind reader. I'm a grid reader. And so all I'm telling you is, reflecting back to you the stuff that you said. That's a good form of bait. And then what you could certainly recognize is what you're doing is giving all of them a bit of a premium instead of just one of them. You could give them a link to a ChangeWorks profile that you've already put together, and you then invite them to come to a webinar or whatever for debriefing it. But the point is you want to give away something that leads them to want to engage your real services. Offering people an opportunity to fill out a bit of a generic pre-mapped change grid has lots of value, but it doesn't diminish the likelihood that they're going to hire you to do something that's more personalized, one-on-one, et cetera.
Right. So if you're hired to, say you get hired to actually help someone with this trade show, do you give them, you work with like their mission critical needs relative to their purpose or what they're trying to do? Is that how you start them out?
Yeah, like for example, let's say that the show was, okay, Chris was at this one for development, and let's ask them some questions about the challenges they face in being a development officer. You could say that I've got one for people that are in a corporate setting and one for people that are in private practice. So here's the questions that you might have if it's an organizational kind of thing. In fact, go back to this. The only reason why those people, that's not true. More often than not, the more compelling reason why someone attended the trade show is because they have some sort of a mission, some sort of a problem they're trying to solve, some sort of an opportunity they're trying to seize, some sort of a need they're trying to address. They're there for a reason because they didn't spend their own money to come to it. They went to the corporation and said, pay for me to go to the show. And whoever authorized that asked the question, why? Why do you want us to spend this money for you to go to this show? And so there are certain people who have the budget and are just going because they wanted to go to San Diego, and this is their excuse to go to San Diego. Those aren't the people I'm talking about, but they're definitely part of the mix. But the people who are there on purpose are there on purpose. And if they're at a show that's about training and development and all those staffing related kinds of things, all those HR and human resource development kinds of things, you can put together an activity list that is there. So maybe it is questions like finding all the qualified candidates we need to fill our most important positions. Maybe it's something like ensuring that our employees continue to view our company as a place of their future growth, et cetera. These kinds of things that ultimately give you the opportunity to say, well, this is why they need to hire a training and development professional. This is why they need our kind of services. I'm looking at a change grid that just the debriefing of the change grid alone is going to tell me what it is that is really going to be, the conversation starter when I do my follow-up.
Right.
Yeah.
This is very helpful. I
Yeah.
have two sisters that back in the Washington, D.C. area, they're both in property management. Those areas have lots of apartment buildings and that kind of thing. And so they get hired to manage properties, and that's a big thing. And they go to those shows all the time where different properties and the manager of those properties are looking for property managers. And so they all have booths and talking about the different services and those kinds of things. I was thinking about a way of trying to help them, which is why I asked that question. I think that would be great.
It's ultimately going to go back to having a ChangeWorks profile ready for them to fill out. And by the way, the only thing that's better than getting them to fill it out is to get them to fill it out while they are standing right there.
Mm.
That gets us, that's going to have to be a short activity list, probably no more than 6, 8, 10 different activities. So I can fill out in 5 minutes. But that's this last little point that Chris chatted over to everyone. Finally, premiums should be earned, not given away. Your visitor must do something before you give them the premium, like fill out a survey or have a conversation or sample something. The premium is your way of saying thank you. A giant bowl of key rings and a place to drop business cards doesn't make anyone feel appreciated and doesn't get you the leads you need.
Yeah, because otherwise it'd just be like window shopping at the mall, right? You're just browsing from this booth to this booth to this booth, but you're taking the freebies as you go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you're giving away an iPad and you say enter the contest to win the iPad, what's the chances that the iPad is going to be won by one of the prospects that you really want to talk to?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to enter that contest. But if you give away something that is related to what you do, but does not take your opportunity away, like for example, you can always give away a needs assessment. Obviously, a change grid is a form of a needs assessment, but if you guys got your other versions of needs assessments, you do. Doing a needs assessment should be viewed as a marketing opportunity, a sales opportunity, more so than a service you could charge for. You know, you got to spend some money to make some money, but what do you want to spend it on? Keychains or what? You know, so.
Hey, T,
Okay.
you know what's equally as important? Like what's post event, right? I was talking to one vendor, had 700 leads on the first day. Asked what are they going to do with them? They said, I don't know, maybe just thank them that they stopped by the booth. They had no plan.
No
for
follow-up strategy.
Nothing.
Oh.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Wow.
nothing. No follow-up strategy. So they spent all that money. And by the way, it's not just the cost of the booth and everything to outfit the booth. It's also the opportunity cost that you've lost because you took those people out of the field. You took them away from their regular jobs.
Right.
So, you know, you've just lost money more times than whatever the cost of admission happened to have been. So, and by the way, the more you can build that case for how expensive a trade show is and how much a waste of money it can become so quickly, what you're doing is enhancing the value you represent when they hire you to fix these things once and for all. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, we'll talk more about it next time around, and hopefully I'll figure out why my system just froze. But there you go. All right, so thanks everybody, and we'll talk again day after tomorrow. So thanks for now.
Are you going to send out the email?
T.
Oh yeah, I'll send out. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Once I can figure out whatever I'm doing, yeah, I'll send it over. All right, thanks
Thank you.
everybody. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.